Do you want?
Yeah, yeah. Need the trust for.
Like to call to order the study session of September 8th, 2025 at 6 p.m. All council members are present, so we will move right on into our first thing of business, study session business, strategic tourism plan update. And I call on Communications Director Carmen Palmer.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for this opportunity to give you an update. I think Councilmember 2 had asked a couple weeks ago, what's going on with tourism? And our strategic tourism plan is about 1 to 2 years old. I'd have to go check the dates on it. So it's a 10-year plan. It's a pretty new plan in terms of planner length, but some fun things have been happening with it. So I'm excited to give you that update, especially with a few things that are happening in our region regarding tourism around Sumner as well. We have the right clicker. All right. This is the, as you recall, we hired MMGY Next Factor. They are a leader internationally in strategic tourism to give us some outside perspective. We also had a very unique opportunity. Pierce County had already hired them to do a county-wide tourism plan. So we were able to piggyback, that is the official term, our contract onto theirs, which did two things. It made it cheaper for us to get a sub-area plan. It also made our plan align with the county plan, which is really nice because as much as I love Sumner, not that many people are coming to Sumner and ignoring the giant mountain and the fair and everything else around us. They're coming to experience the whole region. So the more we're aligned with the county-wide plan, I think the stronger Sumner's plan is. So MMGY Next Factor worked with a variety of partners, including Main Street Association, Travel, Pierce County, the Chamber, and came up with this aspirational vision for where we should be in 10 years. So we did pass this in 2024. That gives me the 10-year mark, which they talked about how it has to be aspirational. Personally, I think we do a lot of this already. So, but I am completely biased, but it's a nice description of where we're going. I think sometimes when you talk about tourism, people think of one piece. They see an ad, and so tourism is putting out ads. I relied on this old parable that, according to Google, is from India. Hopefully that's correct, about the blind men who felt an elephant for the first time. So the man who felt the leg thought it was like a tree. The man who felt the tail thought it was like a rope. Who had the trunk thought it was like a snake. You get the idea. Tourism's a little bit like that. People think of one piece, they think of one audience. Tourism for us is putting heads in beds, not just leisure travelers, although that's what we all like to think about because we're all looking forward to the next time we are on vacation and traveling, at least I am. But it's also business travelers. It's people who are traveling for sporting events. Their kids are in leagues, traveling to go to games and play in that. That's one of our high levels of audiences coming in. So many, many things feed into tourism, and I'm going to go over that a little more through the rest of this presentation. One thing I don't think we acknowledge enough is that there is a high alignment with driving tourism with what you do every day. Everything you do to present a safe community that you can travel through easily, that is inviting. Basically, your 5 council strategic priorities are very similar to what the tourism group came up with for the strategic tourism plan, which makes sense when you stop and think about it, because a road serves both a resident and someone who's coming in for more than 50 miles. Same thing, for police, they are also making sure that there's a safe community for everyone here, not just residents, not just visitors. So you'll hear me kind of repeat this theme through the presentation. I think sometimes when people talk about, well, what does a city do to promote tourism? They miss some of the core things we do. Who has the most toilets to flush in our city? Our hotels. So we need a good wastewater treatment facility to make sure all that goes away. So I just want to align. I think sometimes we miss that so much of what a city is doing at its core is actually what does more to bring someone in, not to discount the ads, but the glossy ad only gets you so far. If they have a horrible experience here, it doesn't feel safe, they can't get around, the ad only gets you so far. As I already mentioned, we also have a variety of audiences. The state describes a tourist, yes, they do define it in our, as a person who travels more than 50 miles. That does include day trip and overnight. As I mentioned, sporting events, not just like Seahawks sporting events, although, you know, we are right here on the Sounder line. So when they run those Sounder home trains, we are a great option to go to the game and stay in our hotels. But also business travel, people playing in league that are coming into this area, visiting family, that does count too. So when you're having a major event, a retirement, anniversary, wedding, people are coming in for that. They are an audience as well. I think one of the things I made this note, tourism has to do two things, especially with these different audiences. It has to attract the visitors and then charm the visitors who are already here. So an example of that is I had an aunt visiting me. So she counted as a tourist. She stayed in Puyallup, but anyway, we'll get over that. She was coming over to my house and she just could not get over that she got stopped by a marching band practicing down Park Street. And so what did she do? Of course, she filmed it and posted it to her Facebook saying, you know, visiting my niece in Cutie Patootie, Sumner, Washington. Look at this, the marching band practices down the street. Hey, that helps us for tourism. She's Wednesday, but all those people who are her followers on Facebook, who are more in her home area, are seeing Sumner, Washington. So it's a little bit of both. One of the best things to come out of the plan itself is great, but I think the absolute best thing is the plan isn't just for the city of Sumner. It is to really align all of our partnerships, all of the people who deliver tourism for us, whether they're doing the attracting or the charming or both. So we have started these monthly meetings of all our partners that help us with tourism. And you'll see everyone who participates there. The hotel GMs come and participate. We've had participation from the Old Cannery, you know, the big DMOs that destination marketing organizations you would expect, like Travel Pierce County, like Visit Rainier, Sumner Main Street Association. But then, like I said, we also get the hotels, the cannery, Knudsen Farms. This picture here is Brian showing us the Hot House Rhubarb this last spring. So really getting that experience, realizing what everyone is doing and the alignment. I didn't use a visual, but I think one of the most important roles the city has is we are the grout that is pulling the mosaic together. All these people are doing amazing work for us for tourism. Travel Pierce County does a lot of the sales. We never see because we are not their audience. We're already here. But they do all that work for sales. Sumner Main Street does the events like Rhubarb Days. Knudsen Farms is doing things like Hot House Rhubarb, but also things like the Tulip Festival or the Sunflower Festival they just had. All of that is feeding our tourism ecosystem. And talking with each other is so important. In fact, it was this meeting when we got this tour that the hotels, you should have seen the look on our general manager's faces. They're like, we need photos of these tulip fields. We would put these photos first thing on our homepage for the Sumner hotels. And they're like, how do we get photos? And Brian's like, of course we have photos. Of course, we already hired a photographer. Give me your email. We'll send you the photos. Another thing that came out of this, I don't know if you got the chance to see it. They did a video. They collaborated because they're the presenting sponsor of Rhubarb Days. So they had SMSA out at the farm promoting rhubarb from the farm and Rhubarb Days, and both of them talking about the heritage of rhubarb growing in the valley. It's an amazing video. I haven't seen a better one come out of Sumner that was both educational and promotional for coming to one of our events. So that is what we want to see. Those partnerships might involve the city, might not, but we are the grout that's bringing all that together. So I mentioned in your agenda bill for tonight, I was going to walk through the main goals of the plan and kind of give you an update where we are. This could quickly get very tedious because there's lots of little minutia in there. So I wasn't going to read these slides. I was just going to kind of roll through quickly. All the slides are in your packet or the agenda packet that's available online for the public. So I'll just kind of go through at a high level and see if you have any questions. The first one is enhanced tourism infrastructure. This is where the city comes into play big time. I already mentioned infrastructure you don't necessarily see, like the sewer lines or the roads. But that's also things like what we're doing right now with rebuilding Heritage Park and building Hops Alley. Huge piece of bringing people. So in each one, I have a slide for the plan and then a slide for what we are doing. You know, some of these, it was interesting. This plan was built both with feedback from all of our partners, but also the outside perspective of MMGY Next Factor. So you will see some surprising things on there that maybe we wouldn't have thought of, like develop boutique hotels downtown. That's where they came in and said, look, you've got these second floors. You know, other cities are putting boutique hotels up there, so you have rooms to stay in right on your main street. That got some people's attention. Glamping got some people's attention. So it's nice to get that outside perspective as well as have someone synthesize what Sumner already intended to do. One thing, the Rainier to Ruston is doing a major push. That run has been happening for a long time, but they actually just got Pierce County lodging tax dollars to push that out for tourists. So for people beyond 50 miles to come stay for the Rainier to Ruston. Does not go through Sumner. Really wish it did, but it goes right by us in Puyallup. But guess what? Our hotel is just about equidistant from the start and finish line. So looking forward to meeting with them to see how we can integrate with that. Placemaking, this is a big one for the city. So is accessibility and sustainability. And some of these do start to trickle into some of our other plans. So things like sustainability, I didn't touch on very heavily because that's a lot of what our public works department is already doing through our water plan, our wastewater plan, our, you know, the White River restoration, all of those things. But you do see some things already happening with both accessibility and with placemaking. One thing I want to highlight that is not ours, while infrastructure is a heavy one for the city, it is not our category alone. SMSA is currently moving forward with phase 1 of Light Up Maine. All the buildings had lights on them. Those were the lights you would get at Costco. So they were really good and looked really good for a couple of years, but they were not meant to be out there permanently. So SMSA is doing a push to get the permanent trim lights on buildings, and they are handling that 100% themselves, which is wonderful to see. Create attractions, events, and experiences. So once you're here, you should have lots to do. The Seattle Center, we used to call it surprise and delight. There's those things you come in to do, and then there's those things that surprise and delight you that you weren't expecting. Here's what the plan calls for. That Doors Open Festival is one we have not touched yet. That was really an idea they gave us from another city about our industrial area. So many cool things happen in our industrial area. Some of you have had the chance to see that. You roast coffee, every camera is out. I mean, you see that, those roasting coffee beans coming out of the hopper, I'm going to use the wrong terms, into the vat. Everyone's got their cameras out. That is very cool to see. Driving by the Delano's building, not so cool to see. So much of what is interesting happening up in the North End happens for security and for food safety behind walls. So you can't see what's happening up there. So they said another community did what's called a Doors Open Festival, where once a year, these companies threw their doors open and showed people what's happening inside those buildings. Interesting concept. Don't know if it'll ever work for Sumner, but it is in the plan to see if we can get that to work. Haven't gotten there yet. I will say though, if you were at Rhubarb Days, again, SMSA did a spectacular job. They did secure funding from Pierce County lodging tax for next year to do some extra promotion outside 50 miles for it. So stay tuned. It just keeps growing and growing. I'm just going to pause and see, did anybody have any questions as I'm rolling through these?
Any questions, Barbara?
So how many people are staying at the hotels now? Do you have an idea of the percentage, you know, their occupancy rate?
I do, and I just talked to the GM. We actually just lost our GM at the Holiday Inn. We did not lose him. He went up to King County to another job. But I was talking to the GM at the Candlewood, and Travel Pierce County gets what's called STAR reports, and they give you percentages for regions in Pierce County. We are with Puyallup, so it's the Puyallup-Sumner region, so you don't know specifically if it's Sumner's hotels or Puyallup's hotels. What startled me is through the summer, we were running at like 90% occupancy in the Sumner Puyallup region for the weekends. So I'll get into this a little more. What I asked at the Candlewood is I said, when those hotels were built, we were like 80% business travel because of the manufacturing industrial center. So I said, when you're at 90% occupancy on the weekends, that doesn't look like business travel to me. And he said, no, they've seen a big shift. And one of the things for the Candlewood he has noticed is that with some of the uncertainties in the economy, at least this summer, he said a lot more families were doing staycations. And when they did that, they wanted the kitchenette. So a Candlewood that was starting to be more, was built more to be business travel, was starting to see a shift to more family travel as well. So we do get those reports. Of course, it fluctuates over the months, and we do know winter is the down season for all of Pierce County, not just Sumner. And we do know, I'll get into this a little bit more. We know things that we do drive stays in Sumner. We know things around us. The fair pushes people to our hotel. There's a thing called compression. It's a technical term for the hotel hospitality industry, but it kind of makes sense. If one area is booking their hotels, people are still getting married, they're still having retirement parties. So if one area is booked, the travelers start to compress out into the neighboring areas. So Seattle with the cruise ships, huge compression that starts coming down into Pierce County. Whether there's no rooms available or those rooms are very expensive and the budget traveler is looking for a cheaper option that's still within striking distance. So that's what we're seeing.
Good, yeah.
We have lost, Travel Pierce County will tell you, I won't do as good of a job as Dean, but we have lost a number of rooms, hotels that are converting to low-income housing, that type of thing. So the county has lost a significant portion of rooms from the Fife and Hosmer area. And our numbers are pretty flat. So that unfortunately tells us that even though we're seeing some, what looks like growth, it's a masked growth because we actually lost inventory. So we'll see what happens. I do know during the pandemic
Get there.
was the one time we didn't lose as much stays as the national average, which highlighted for all of us. What we didn't realize is how much Pierce County is business travel, especially off the base, something that didn't adjust as much as the rest of the world with the pandemic.
Councilmember Bowman.
Thanks. Thanks. So with all that said, because I kept, as you were going on and on, I thought maybe she's gonna answer this.
Oh,
We'll
shoot.
see, but that's okay. You got really, really close.
Getting
though.
close.
So I was gonna ask about the conversion to the housing. But that just adds to, if we focus on this strategy plan, are you is this group, are you guys looking out in terms of as, like if Rhubarb Days really grows? I mean, where is our shortage in regards to hotels? Where's our gap gonna be? Right? Because it's Peel Up Sumner, so I know that's kind of hard.
Right.
And I do know a lot of people that stay there for weddings and out of town events. I mean, so, and we've had that growth of the hotels on the north side. But can you define a gap, kind of a hotel gap? I mean, it might be hard, but as I would just say, are we looking at both sides of that coin, right? Because we do want to grow tourism, but then we do need to have a place for people to stay.
You need a place for people to stay. What we've talked about more for Sumner, and I think a little bit Pierce County, but I don't want to talk so much for Pierce County. I want to speak more for Sumner. What frightens me is how close we are to all the King County properties. And, you know, when I'm up at Mount Rainier, I kind of listen to people around me as I'm hiking and everything. And I hear a lot of people saying things like, I'm staying in Bellevue and came down for the day. So we talk about our big, as a county, we talk about our big demand generators, the Mountain, State Fair. Unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, it's the same, it's two sides of the same coin. We are so close to King County that we benefit from their compression and their success. We also, pretty much even our biggest demand generators could be a day trip out of King County. So we talk a lot about this is the and Sumner is the and. I adore Sumner, but we are not a demand generator up there with Mount Rainier. No one's going to come to Main Street and be like, well, forget that giant mountain we were headed to. We're going to just spend the whole day here. If we start adding together enough ands, we can no longer be a day trip out of King County properties. You will want to stay in Pierce County, hopefully Sumner, and build up our properties here. So that's a lot why we talk about we have to keep getting better and better and better at packaging up. Yes, you want to go to Mount Rainier and you want to go visit the State Fair and you can't miss the LeMay Museum and you got to check out downtown Sumner. Doing all that synergy in the ands, and you'll see this in Pierce County's, the alignment and the synergy was what they really hit hard, that Pierce County was missing that opportunity. So there's that. The other piece I will tell you that's a little more practical of what you were talking about is short-term rentals. There are a lot of people looking for short-term rentals for various reasons. There are different communities, including in Pierce County, that ruled out short-term rentals. We were not one of them. So that does make that's one of those push and pulls. The affordable housing people don't want to see short-term rentals because they see it as competition for limited housing. The tourism people are saying, please don't eliminate the short-term rentals because there's a significant audience looking for that type of property to stay in. So I hope that,
Well, it did, just one, and you don't have to answer this, and we can talk offline, but just the other element is that I know we're the and, but is there somewhere in our tourism plan that we want people to come stay here and go to Rhubarb Days and maybe, you know, these things and the Daffodil Festival or Fields? I mean, all those things. It seems like we're just prime for creating such an opportunity to bring people into this city to spend time and spend money here. And so how those things come together, you know, that's kind of where I'm at.
got it.
So,
Okay,
okay,
let me keep going, but if I don't answer it and what I've got next,
perfect. Thanks.
call me out on it. Is there anybody else before I keep going?
Anybody else? Andy, go ahead.
I'm not sure if this is the right place to ask the question, but I did notice that Puyallup seemed to have all of our car shows that we used to have in Sumner. I just noticed there's nothing on here about car shows or things like that, and I thought that was a pretty big deal. The Classy Chassis used to be here every year. Is there something, what happened there?
So the good news is Classy Chassis came back this year. That was a hard one. Our Sumner Main Street Association, they do a great job with events. They do, or traditionally did a lot of events. It was just nonstop events, and really a Main Street Association is supposed to do multiple things. They're supposed to be about design. They're supposed to be about promotion. They are supposed to be about events, but they're supposed to do multiple things. I'm speaking a little bit for Lori and her board, but I think they're trying to balance out and focus in on fewer, better events that they can put their energy into, like Rhubarb Days, rather than just, and then it's the next one, and then it's the next one, and then it's the next one. So they stopped doing Classy Chassis. This year, I think there was a great partnership where the band association actually picked it up and moved it to the high school parking lot, which was really nice for SMSA to see it come back, but not be a burden on them. It was also really nice for us because having it in the parking lot took it off Main Street, and it was one less where we were having to shut down Main Street and work on all that. I'm going to stray a little bit. Events, and jump in if you want. Events are quite a beast. Everyone loves them. They are a challenge. It's not every time I watch one of those movies, usually a Hallmark movie, where they're like, let's hold an event this Saturday. And they're like, great, I'll print up the flyers. So much has to go into now the infrastructure and the security, especially after things like New Orleans. I always say the wrong W name. Waukesha, Wisconsin. They had the people drive through the Santa Parade that looked exactly like ours. The pressure on us to provide a secure event space just keeps going up and up and up. And that's not only through our own worries, but our insurance company with WCIA. So having events find alternate, we love events, but having them not always take Main Street or I'm going to shut down some roads is a benefit to the city and to the organizers, because it also makes it a cheaper event to put on because you're not hiring all of us in public works and police, especially that one was Sunday. So it was like double overtime. And that's also why we're building something like Hops Alley so that people could hold smaller events without shutting down Main Street and interrupting those traffic patterns and being so expensive. So you're right about the car show. I know the cruise, I think they just stopped. Did they dissolve Cruise Sumner? I believe so. I think Cruise Sumner dissolved. I noticed Puyallup was still doing theirs because I accidentally was over there when they were having one. Just waved from my very not cool class, not cause a car. But some of these things just kind of, we would maybe like to still see them happen. But if the event organizers can't do them, then there's that push and pull.
Okay, yeah, and the other ones I was looking at, I was like, I didn't see anything like I feel like a big event is the bridge lighting, for example. Is that not included for a reason? I guess I'm just curious, the things were included. I was like, oh yeah, those are important. And I was like, did I miss them? I looked them up. I did a search and I couldn't.
Bridge lighting is a huge event. It's interesting when you talk about tourism events. Events are an interesting beast when you talk about tourism because every community has their events. So there's been lots of discussions at the county level about what events are wonderful community level events and what events truly do bring in the visitor who's going to travel more than 50 miles to see that event. So for Sumner, Rhubarb Days is probably the first one to elevate up to there. I love the Daffodil Parade. And people are traveling to be in the parade. I'm not sure that many people are traveling more than 50 miles to come to the parade. Bridge lighting is right on the cusp. It's unique enough, but every city, I know every year I miss some things happening in Tacoma because the Tacoma tree lighting is always the same night as the Sumner Bridge lighting. So yeah, there's lots of that going on. So you have to be careful on, it doesn't say whether or not it's a good event. It just is whether or not it's a tourism event. Those are two different things. I will say big time kudos to SMSA because Rhubarb Days was routinely seen by countywide people as that's a great local event. That's great, Sumner. You all get to see your neighbors, but that's not really tourism. When they applied this year for Pierce County lodging tax, nobody in that room even questioned them. It got a unanimous approval from the board and no one even said, oh, that's in Sumner. Oh, you know, that's not like it's Seafair, which is the language we had been hearing about 3 to 5 years ago. So kudos to SMSA for changing that event so much that it changed the narrative and really bumped that one into a tourism. Okay.
Anybody else before we move on? No? No? I think you're good.
All right. Agritourism. You already saw the picture of Brian holding up the rhubarb crowns, I think is the right word. Agritourism is big. People want to pick things, touch things, have photos with things. I went out to a blueberry farm that was in Enumclaw, but I'm an equal opportunity tourism person. And it was funny to watch how I think people spent 50% of their time taking the perfect photo and 50% of their time actually picking blueberries. It's what's really popular right now. You know, people don't want to just maybe get the produce at the store or even a farm stand. They want to be on the farm. Luckily, we are surrounded by farms that are moving this way. I would say when I first started doing tourism with Sumner, the farmers were like, please don't tell people where we are because we just want to get the most out of our crop. We don't want dogs and people in our crop. Actually, that hurts our crop. We just want a farm, send it to market and be done. Farms are definitely moving a different way. This is one of those things where we're going to play a little bit outside our boundaries. There are no farms in Sumner. I don't care. There are no farms in LaConner either, and yet those tulips have sure worked well for them. So we are really working consciously to tie ourselves to agritourism, at least down the valley. Knudsen Farms is the one going all in on this. The next one I would say, you know, even what's happening at Farm 12, Sidhu Farms, Spooner Farms, McMillan Farms. That was starting to get a little closer to Ording, but I'll budget. You know, McMillan Farm, I stopped in the week before Rhubarb Days, and he was doing a brew and jazz festival the Saturday night of Rhubarb Days. And so no one was around. So I kind of said, I'm from the city of Sumner, and, you know, we have our Rhubarb Days this weekend. And he goes, I know, and I grow rhubarb. He's like, I should have gotten my act together and been more, you know, had a booth. And I said, yes. And you know, we shut down at 7. I mean, that is a perfect opportunity for those ands and those partnerships that once the Main Street stuff stops at 7 to tell people, hey, if you'd like, you can go to an actual rhubarb farm at the barn and have more brews and jazz and keep celebrating into the evening. Be a perfect partnership. So we keep trying to make those connections and again, keep amping up the cooking classes, cidery tours, live music. Cockerel Hard Cider is the other one. Again, I know it's outside our boundary. Don't really care. I have chatted with Puyallup. I did kind of ask them. I said, so when it says Puyallup, you know, always in season, are you guys thinking agritourism? And at least the answer Eric gave me at the time was that they were thinking of not just the fair, but the farmers market. They seem to be focusing more on within their borders, which they do have other things happening that we don't have. So I totally get it, which means I kind of want to align some of these farms more with Sumner and work with Puyallup and make it all come together. I think at some point I do want to invite Puyallup to one of our monthly meetings so they can chat with us about what they're doing with tourism, what we're doing, and just keep aligning. So I'm sorry, I kind of jumped ahead. There are the tulips, nowhere near as big as the Skagit Valley, but guess what? You can actually get to ours. The last I've heard of the traffic at Skagit Valley, I think they're almost hitting that too much of a good thing. We always had we still had a rhubarb pie website that was focused on tourism through a number of things, through some changes with the Main Street Association when they maybe didn't have a website. Actually thought about shutting it down and I just decided not to lose an asset we had. And so now I think I am starting to push that more toward agritourism, I'm building it slowly because there's so much else to do, but what the different crops are, when you can come, where there's farms, where that pairs well with going out to the farm and maybe having a glass of wine on Main Street, still bringing it and grounding it with Sumner, really treating Sumner as the home base, the hometown, right? Hometown charm is our calling card. So giving visitors a hometown to go explore Mount Rainier and the farms and Tacoma and everything around us. One thing we have not explored yet that MNGY Next Factor was really hot on, so I didn't want to say, no, that's probably not for us because we paid them to give us their perspective. But they're saying people are really, they're not just wanting to experience going out on the farm, they actually want to like pull the rhubarb or pick the berries, which I guess matches the blueberry farm I was at. So kind of starting to work on some experiential volunteerism where they're combining doing something that benefits the area with their plant. Haven't done that yet. We'll see how that goes. They also recommended one thing you can probably define Lucy Ryan Park, and then also incentivize businesses to stay open. I actually asked them to leave incentivize. I think they had originally had pay businesses to stay open, which would be a gift of public funds. So we kind of broadened that. We all know it's a challenge. There's not much to do in Sumner after 5 o'clock. So we are working on with Ryan Park, the bookend concept for Main Street with Heritage Park to not only activate each space, but activate everything in between in our entire downtown, which keeps the whole city feeling very active into the evening. We also had generous influencers trying out the night market this summer. Again, that was a private group running those markets. Connectivity and mobility. This is one where I thought, this is interesting. Like from a city perspective, I feel like this is the 6-year tip in our transportation plan, and there's already all these plans. Why is this in the tourism plan? I will tell you, one time I had an experience. I was working a conference for Sumner, but it was at the Tacoma Convention Center. And these people, it was the Go West Summit. And these people came up to me from England and they said, we want the classic American cheeseburger. Where do we get the classic American cheeseburger? Of course, my first answer would have been Main Street Dairy Freeze, but they were already in Tacoma. So I said, well, probably from here, your best bet is Frisco Freeze. Doesn't get any more classic than that. I mean, it practically screams Happy Days. And they said, great. Now we have no car. How do we get there? Oh boy. Today, the Link Light Rail would work, but 10 years ago, not so much. It just highlighted how when you're traveling, especially if you don't have a car, connectivity means everything. This is one section of our plan where I would say it is part of our plan. And this is why we have a sub-area plan of the county plan. This is really where the county needs to start solving some of these issues, or all of us working with other people. Things like there is not an easy way to get to Mount Rainier if you do not have a car. These days with some of the infrastructure issues, there's not an easy way to get to Mount Rainier, even if you do have a car. But they really focused on things like the bike trails. You'll notice they talk a lot about the industrial area. Remember, a lot of our visitors are those business travelers. Even with it shifting, we still have a lot of people staying in our hotels who are on business travel to serve the industrial area. So even though when we talk about leisure travelers and we say Sumner tourism, we immediately think of Main Street, what's bringing in a lot of our overnight stays is actually the industrial area. And it's on us to connect that with people who are here for business, but need some place to eat, need something to do after their meetings, trying to connect that a little bit better for them. And then that's also where, and we tried the connector bus, that was for the train, but it also didn't seem to get a whole lot of tourists riding it either. It is also why we amplify the trains that come through for the games and for concerts, because it makes Sumner a great place to stay. World Cup, those are, as Visit Pierce County said, unfortunately, the games in Seattle are midday, midweek games. And I said, hey, guess what? They're midday, midweek games. That means the Sounders already running. They don't have to argue for extra times versus BNSF. So Sumner's a great place to stay to go to a World Cup game.
So I think we need to take advantage of the light rail's going to be in Federal Way by December. And from our station, it's just 2 stops to the light rail connecting. And I just think people don't understand how easy it is to get to Seattle from
Yeah.
here.
Well, I think now how easy to get to the airport. Honestly, Sumner to the airport was always a bit of a challenge for me
Yeah.
because unless you wanted to get on a bus and figure out like Metro bus system, there was never an easy, it's like you go right by it. Like, and finally one time I wanted to do all public transit. I didn't want to drive. So I actually took the Sounder into Seattle, flipped over to the light rail at King Street Station, took the light rail back out. I think I was on Sound Transit more than I was on Alaska Airlines for my flight. But to have that option, to not a non-bus option it is huge because
Well, I
Sumner's
think
not
you
that far
can
away.
emphasize like for the cruises,
Mhm.
you know, people can come south easier than what they thought
Yes.
probably.
Love it.
Andy's got some.
Go ahead, Andy.
I'm just curious, just thinking about the attempt we did on the shuttle. I forget what you call it. Anyways, I was curious, does a lot of times hotels have a really nice shuttle system? Is there a chance for the city to look into just what it would look like to partner with them to enhance what they do? Because I think if they were bringing tourism, they were giving people better opportunities to get downtown or getting to different places. It might be easier than trying to create our own system, which we did earlier this year.
Yeah, and my memory is when the Holiday Inn opened, they had a van, which made this so great to promote. And then somewhere along the line, they didn't have a van. I need to ask, I'll ask the new GM why that doesn't pencil for them. Because that was kind of a sad loss. I think the other thing is we don't, and it's coming up in another one, is the other option is to lean into Uber and Lyft and those. One thing I heard at a conference was making sure people, there are, especially for something like Rhubarb Days, that there are designated Uber and Lyft stations. So that it's easy for the people to access something like an event when we have limited parking and the streets shut down by rideshare and just giving that entry. So something like that maybe is another option as well.
Go ahead, Pat.
So I'm curious, and I'm just thinking about the people who are maybe getting off the Sounder or off the bus, and they need to get to the industrial center. Has anyone ever inquired about having like an e-scooter, e-bike business here within Seattle? It'd be great for Sounder Station.
Yes, that is actually coming on a future slide, but we're really close, so we'll just talk about it now. That is in the plan. One thing I mean, I just have the idea, so I threw it there, but I haven't done anything other than have the idea, is to talk to the Bonnie Lake Bicycle Shop that's right on Main to see if there's like day rentals. I don't know. I bought my bike from them, but I have no idea what they offer or what they'd be willing to offer for those medium things, so that, you know, there's the big national companies where you have them here and how to check them out and that, but is there like a medium intro thing we can maybe do with a local company? It's an idea I've had. Again, haven't had time to do anything more with it. If any of them are watching, they're going, what?
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, Carmen, I've heard you mention, Mount Rainier a number of times. I know in King County, it kind of sparked an idea. In King County, they have the Trailhead Direct program where Metro provides trips from Seattle to certain trailheads for people to go explore near the pass or whatever that might be. Obviously, we don't have Pierce Transit service here. I think a number of us are hoping that maybe in the future that changes, but any discussions or thoughts around how Sumner again could be a home base in that respect, where we could provide some sort of transit service down the road to the mountain?
I think transit service or also being a location. So here I'm speaking a little bit for Visit Rainier. Maylee Anderson, who's on our LTAC committee, she is the marketing for them, so she would know this a little bit better. Lots of discussions about access to the mountain. What keeps hanging everybody up is where do you park the first time to get on a shuttle bus? Because, you know, lots of people have the great idea you should bring back the old gear jammers, right? Like a new version, but one, you know, the old that everyone would take a picture of, the red, you know, open air. You know, you need to do that so that they don't have to drive through the park, that they can just get on one of those and then go to the, you know, main trailheads in Paradise and not clog the park. Question is, where do you put that big of a parking lot to bring those visitors in the first place to meet the bus? So lots of ideas being floated. Sumner, we're a little far away, but with some of the challenges happening right now with infrastructure, I don't know. I don't know if there's room there to be part of that conversation. The other big one that has my attention is I think Mount Rainier Railroad is just going to grow and grow and grow. And they're out of space to park in LB. Eventually they do want to move to Eatonville and I believe have facility there to build a bigger lot and a bigger facility, but they need the tracks. And I believe One thing they found out is when their bridge burned this summer, everyone thought that was their current line. So if anyone's watching, just a plug for Mount Rainier Railroad, their current line is actually fine. That is not what burned. What burned is where they want to expand. But I have had conversations with them. They had early conversations before the pandemic with the old cannery. You know, there's so much interest around, especially their special trains, like the holiday train. You know, can you buy tickets at the cannery? Is there something Sumner can do to help welcome people out before they head farther out? Because we're kind of that transition point from the freeway out to the country roads. So lots of different discussions. Keep the ideas coming about how do we fit into that? Where can we be an asset that brings people then into Sumner?
Carla.
Thanks. Just real quick, so last week I attended the Tacoma Pierce County Economic Development Board, and Sound Transit was there and did a great presentation. Just a tidbit, I didn't realize that train is gonna run 21 hours a day, 365 days a year. So to Barb's point, when she talked about Federal Way, I mean, they have a very aggressive schedule to just be able to move up and down this entire region. So I think that's a great element, and they asked about coming to talk to us here, so I think I told them to reach out to either Jason or Ryan. That said, get here and share with us. The other thing is, I do believe, back to what Andy said, having been a lifelong traveler for business, nothing was nicer than when the hotel, you know, would pick me up at a certain place, and if I had to ride a train there, I knew I then had that ride, especially I know people that do a lot of business there in the MEC, right? And they bring people here into the city when they do business dinners. So it just, everything I'm seeing, I can start to see all the dots starting to connect, right? That you can really leverage then for a tourism plan. But yeah, that train is going to be running a lot. So we really want to jump on that, no
Jump
pun
on.
intended. Yeah, sorry.
Any other questions before we move on? Down on this end? We're good? Go ahead, Carmen.
All right, this is a lot of what we've already talked about. You know, the transit, a lot of this is coming out of actually Public Works. We did add through Sumner lodging tax some bike racks along Main Street, so thank you for those. I did notice them being used this summer. And the Friar Avenue Trail, Public Works is working on that one. So more just keep coming. One thing I wanted to add, Pierce County lodging tax. So I just sit on that as a user of the lodging tax. Just approved money, I think some seed money, I think they're looking for more funding, talking about transportation, to also test an electric ferry between Seattle and Tacoma. So they had a unique opportunity with a electric hydrofoil ferry provider where they would lease one. Usually they only build them to sell. And with the World Cup, they were talking with Pierce County about leasing one to the county for a year, not just during World Cup, but for a year to run that ferry between Seattle and Tacoma. Now, it's far away from Sumner. So they talked about the last mile. I'm like, how about the last 15 miles to Sumner? So talk about connectivity. This is one of those things where it's like, well, do we have a ride share? Here's the numbers you call to come out to Sumner. How do we start connecting that to places like us? You know, let alone Mount Rainier. But as we talk about connectivity, trains, a boat would be really nice, because I also think a lot of people would ride the boat just to ride the boat, a lot like our traditional ferry system. So stay tuned. The other piece of this, if I remember right, is because it's electric and hydrofoil, they don't have to worry as much. It doesn't create as much of a wake, so it can go faster, meaning it's not a 2-hour ride from Seattle to Tacoma. It's actually a quicker ride. So stay tuned. We did give our support to that. Strengthen identity and alignment. Love this picture from this year's Rhubarb Days with Rhubarb the reindeer. Here's one where we deviate. So far, we're going to recommend deviating a little bit from the plan unless we get different direction from you. MMGY Next Vector recommended we undertake a community-wide exercise on brand and identity. Of course, this is a service they offer for another contract to reassess your brand identity. I did talk a lot with that group we're meeting with, which is, you know, our destination marketing organizations. I said, did our brand really change? Your brand is your reputation. Brand, you know, it's not necessarily the ads or the logos. It's what you're known for. It's what people come for. And I said, I feel like we're hitting the small town charm thing pretty dang well. I'm not sure it's worth spending a lot of money to figure out if that's still who we are. And they agreed that there's things we can do to improve that promotion, but the identity is still there. And in fact, there's lots of things here, but I realized we actually did this because it's the comp plan. I mean, the comp plan sets out the vision for a community, which should be what you're selling to your visitors, because you're not one community to your residents and then do a 180 and you're a different community for your visitors. So I actually realized we pretty much did this when we just did the whole year-long process last year to update our comp plan. So that was kind of a nice realization, and just a reminder, as I'm saying, the things police and public works do that lead to tourism, so does planning and our community development department. The one thing we did talk about is we could be doing more. One thing they talked about is just the East End and the industrial area need their own names. I mean, we call it the MIC because it's a manufacturing industrial center, but that's kind of an internal jargon. That's not necessarily something somebody would know. So from our tourism group, recommendations to, yes, figure out a name to name it. A lot of people like the idea for a name for our East End. However, we're waiting on that for just a few more developments to happen so that we can have the people who are living and doing business be part of the naming rather than trying to pick a name and make them use it. The other piece we talked about is, you'll see the come on in, which is our invitation, our call to action. Those graphics were developed about 14, 15 years ago. And the idea was we launched it at the same time as we launched Rhubarb High Capital. And the idea was to give unifying graphics that everybody could use when they reference Sumner. For-profit businesses, nonprofit businesses, the city, everybody that wasn't aligned with the city logo, and which is sometimes for regulatory and business, like something that's fun that everyone was welcome to use. We talked a lot with the group, and again, this is our Main Street Association. There's been so much turnover. I think I'm about the only person who remembered we still had these assets. So they recommended that we blow the dust off them. They actually said they thought they still played really well. They did not look like 15-year-old graphics, which means they were really good graphics when they were developed. So they recommend we start putting these out and letting our partners, again, library, SMSA, any business, go ahead and use them if they'd like, along with the Rhubarb High Capital. So that's one thing we will be doing very soon. I think this is it. I talked about the connection, Knudsen Farms. I don't know if you guys caught it. They did billboard advertising for their Tulip Festival. Oh, it was wonderful to see a giant billboard that just had all the tulips and said Knudsen Farms, Sumner, Washington. So they have been in conversations with the Main Street Association about possibly partnering on future billboards. So that is nice to see that partnership. About World Cup. When you talk about tourism, this is what is on everybody's minds. I already talked a little bit about this. Midweek, midday games actually work well for us because the Sounders already running. One of the games also aligns really, really well. It's the night before Rhubarb Days. So that will be good to see. Travel Pierce County has received a lot of money from Pierce County Lodging Tax to develop both the fan zone. They're also talking about a glass scavenger hunt across the county. Ways to encourage people who are coming to the World Cup to explore the whole county, stay longer. What they do know is a lot of these people, they are really into the games. So it's great we have them, but there's one following our game in Vancouver, which is an easy drive away. So trying to lure all those visitors to keep staying here and explore us a little bit more. So Travel Pierce County is really taking the lead on us for that. They are working really closely with Pierce County Exec's office, lots of partners. They have been in on the conversations from the beginning. So the good news is this is one of those things where Sumner will benefit from all of their hard work. So we're not focusing a ton of time and energy on World Cup, but we are watching and staying in touch with what they're doing. And then I touched a little bit on this throughout the presentation, but it does also get to Deputy Mayor Bowman's question. Everything that happens around the county and the region does affect our tourism. Sumner does not stand alone on this. Whether or not there's reservations at Mount Rainier. Last year, they required reservations at both entrances. This year, they compromised, and Paradise entrance is without reservations. The Sunrise entrance requires a reservation all summer. How does that work for tourism? Makes the experience a lot nicer. I can attest to that from using the reservation system. And for visitors who maybe didn't plan ahead, what does that mean? Tacoma is actually going to get in 2026 smaller cruises, and they will be there's a technical term for this, embarkation, debarkation point. They're not just a stop, they're where you actually board the cruise ship and get off the cruise ship, which makes it a good spot to encourage people to come in early and stay late. So Tacoma will be getting one of those smaller, it's not the giant ones that are going into Seattle, it's one of those smaller ones, but still a new asset coming into our region. Maylee with Visit Rainier, when I asked, I sent all our partners this PowerPoint and said, did I miss anything? And she said, well, I am certainly gaining a new appreciation for how infrastructure impacts your numbers. I mean, our northeast side of Mount Rainier, between the loss of the Fairfax Bridge that takes out the entire Carbon River entrance to Mount Rainier, and now potentially the loss of the White River Bridge between Buckley and Enumclaw, it's just really affecting tourism. It's affecting our neighbors in Enumclaw and Buckley a lot more. Poor Wilkeson was just starting to get restaurants and kind of a bit of a fun rural visit experience, and now they're a little cut off on both sides. So infrastructure does matter. I already mentioned the Mount Rainier Railroad. Upgrades at the fairgrounds. I mean, the fair drives tourism here, overnight stays here. Not just during the fair. And I know they're doing a lot of work to expand what they bring to the fairgrounds throughout the year, not just during the 4 weeks of the fair. One thing when I drove out when I had to drive through Enumclaw, up through Auburn, I always go 410 to Mount Rainier. It was good to change your path a while. I remembered how close the White River Amphitheater is to us. It's across a county line, which means we tend not to think about it, but Sumner hotels are actually well positioned outside the Muckleshoot Hotel if you are going to something there. And as I mentioned, this summer, we have seen the results of a lot of hard work with high occupancy rates in our region. By the way, the picture is the Mount Fremont Lookout Trail, in case you were wondering where to go. For all of you, tonight was more informative. A few things to put on your radar. Keep supporting our partners. Again, I'm the one here before you, but I'm really telling you about the hard efforts of lots of organizations. So when they have their annual meetings, I know it means a lot to them to see elected officials there. It means they realize they do have the support of the cities they serve. I think there's room in 2026 to talk about maybe, content from elected officials. We have that hometown charm, but what's the local gossip on the best place to eat, the best place? We have to do that very carefully, because then the city is promoting certain businesses over others. But is there a way to kind of lean into that character with our elected officials? We always bring to you, and we will be having our lodging tax group meet and make some funding recommendations for you. So that will be coming to you very shortly. And then actually the TPA is looking at doing an update, probably that you'll see after the first of the year. TPA is the tourism promotion area. This is on top of lodging tax. Regions can establish a tourism promotion area specifically for promotion. The state lets you charge, I believe, up to $7 per room. Sumner's TPA has, as part of Pierce County's TPA, has been in place for a number of years, and we're charging 50 cents per room. We're getting whooped by Vancouver, Bellevue, Spokane. They are all beating us in the funding game. So Travel Pierce County and Pierce County itself are coordinating an effort to relook at that interlocal agreement, adjust some of those numbers. They're also working with our hotels. So they're not going to bring you something that our hotels say, what? So they're doing that front end work with the hotels, which is why you will probably see this after the first of the year, because they will only bring it to us after they go through all of it. Go ahead, Barbara.
Do you know when the parking garage is gonna open?
Next year.
Oh, thank you.
Hopefully by this time next year, it'll be well open.
But
As long as they
they're
stay on schedule.
planning before the World Cup.
Their current schedule puts them opening before the World Cup.
Well, at least they got going on to the second floor now, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, that'd be good once that gets in, then you'll be bringing more people from our area. And I think one thing we miss is, how do you encourage the commuters to stay? Because I know most of them get in their cars and they're gonna be getting out of, going home as quick as they can, but what are ways that, our businesses or different things can be promoted so that they do want to have dinner here, so.
That is always the question. I also know, as a commute, when I used to be a commuter, a 10-hour day was a 10-hour day. I just wanted to get home.
Yeah.
But I'm a creature of habit. So I was so used to going to the places where I parked that I would tend to go to those places for leisure as well. So I think the one thing we've never captured, and we've talked about ways to maybe capture it, like a punch card or a loyalty card, it's never come through, is to see how many of those commuters are coming back into Sumner, not on their commute day though,
Mhm.
but when they're coming back on Saturday, Sunday, because they're used to coming here to shop and eat.
Yeah.
But that's always the age old, how do we?
And
Beautiful
then all the
carpet,
people that go to the games, cause that's another big drivers.
big one.
Anybody else? Oh, you good?
Before I close out, I said it was not for ads, but I was going to debut. We had some extra time left with Pierce County TV last year, so Joe McKinney worked with them to film a holiday shopping promo ad that we can run. And we're not going to run this on Tubi or Cairo or anything, but we all have so many different social media accounts, especially someone like the Old Cannery, that as long as we have a same video we all share, that gets you a lot of promotion. So here's the debut of it. How do you make it play? I've seen that being used on our social this fall.
Nice.
Tattoo.
Any last questions, guys? Good? We're good? Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you.
Nice job. All right, moving on to manufactured home park overlay zoning code text amendment, and I'm going to call on Development Director Ryan Windish.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Good to be here tonight. Going over a proposed zoning code text amendment regarding manufactured home park overlay zone. So the meeting objective is to go over the proposed zoning amendment. It's been through the Planning Commission, and then it's their recommendation to approve. And then review and respond to questions from City Council, and then talk about next steps in the schedule. So why are we looking at this zoning code text amendment? One of the main reasons is Growth Management Act through House Bill 1220 requires the city to consider minimizing and reducing displacement of vulnerable populations when there is development, redevelopment, and basically gentrification of an area. And so there's a number of different things that the state has you look at. And as the city council was going through the 2024 comp plan update last year, what came out of that was policy that pointed to preserving existing manufactured home parks for manufactured homes and not allowing them to redevelop into, say, apartments. You may recall a couple of years ago, there was an apartment proposal in Puyallup, and it was exactly that. It was a mobile home park. The developer purchased it, and all the tenants had so much time to leave and relocate. And so what the amendment does is it implements clear policies in our comprehensive plan to establish a manufactured home park overlay and preserve those areas as affordable existing. They call it naturally occurring affordable housing for families and seniors. And a little bit of background on mobile home park overlay zones and mobile home parks in Sumner in general. So there are about 260 mobile home sites in Sumner. There are 4 mobile home parks. Only 3 of them are on the list for recommendations that would be affected by this ordinance. The other one is Rainier Manor Mobile Home Park. It's down on the Puyallup River and the River Grove neighborhood. That one's unique because each one of the units is on its own lot. So these mobile home parks that are on the list are, they're not, the underlying land is owned by one landowner, and then the individual sites are leased out. And the tenants own their own mobile home, but they lease the site. So you can see that with one underlying owner, there's a potential that owner says, hey, I want to sell my land and to a developer, and then it would affect the mobile home park would have to be closed. I have a map of where these are located. The AA Mobile Manor is up off the East Valley Highway, north of Elm Street. Crystal Springs is south of Elm Street, closer to the hillside. And then Somerville Estates is off of 160th and north of the Windmill Bistro. We keep going north on that road up towards Elm Street. So those are the 3 that are on the list in the ordinance that's being proposed. So the key points in the amendment, it would apply to existing mobile home parks. Future mobile home parks are exempt. Partly that's because I think there's a very low likelihood we'd see any new mobile home parks. And really the existing mobile home parks are kind of like I mentioned earlier, the naturally occurring affordable housing. A future mobile home park, I can only imagine, would be more expensive given any kind of upgrades for infrastructure and development. Mobile home park owners would have the option to apply for what's called a use exception in the code and make a case that the beneficial use of their property has been so diminished with this restriction that it's no longer kind of economically viable. The standard for making that case would go to our hearing examiner. And really it's making what's called a case for a regulatory taking of property, which is basically saying I can't even use my property for really anything. And it's not, and the city has taken the value of it to such a degree that the city would have to basically buy their property. Regulatory takings are, a constitutional question, and that's why it's recommended that it goes to the hearing examiner, who's normally a land use attorney. Our hearing examiner is a land use attorney, to review that kind of under constitutional grounds. Is this really a regulatory taking? So
Right.
it's a high bar.
Councilmember Bowman has a clarifying question to ask you.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian, so bullet number 2 there, I know you just said some words, but it's just not landing. So I need clarification on what the definition is of use exception and then beneficial use. Can you give me a little more detail on those, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
So a use exception would be the owner making a case that the mobile home park overlay is too restrictive. You want to be able to sell it to a developer, let's say, and they want to be able to come in and say this regulatory rule that you put in place diminishes the value of my property to a degree that I can't do anything with it, and that could be. And I think that's a pretty hard case. It's going to be a pretty hard case to make if you're running a mobile home park. And so they have the option to come in, and some of the comments in the record show that the owner of the AA Mobile Manor, he's come in and said, hey, this mobile home park has a lot of infrastructure issues, water lines that are always breaking and so forth. And it costs money to maintain, which is not surprising. Every property that somebody would own that they're renting or managing in some respect is going to cost something to maintain. So if a property owner says, hey, I would rather sell it to a developer than keep operating it, I want that option. But it's not that easy because they need to make a case that it's not economically viable. It's somehow the city's problem that it's not making money. So I think that's going to be a pretty hard thing to do.
Okay,
Did that
thanks.
answer your question?
Well, kind of, yeah, I mean, I could own a mobile home park and run it into the ground and not fix anything, and then eventually over the lifespan, if you know, you can't use it, I mean, that's what
Mhm.
somebody could potentially do. What I'm hearing you say is it has to pencil out, so you could look at the cost potentially of fixing all the water lines that potentially were never fixed. And say that, you know, it's just gonna put me in a deficit, you know, I've been running in a surplus, but I would hope it couldn't just be that simple to be able
No.
to say, right, so
Yeah,
I'm hearing you say there's more.
there's more to it.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out the loophole.
Yeah, no, I
all.
appreciate that.
Well, I think the benefit of having a hearing examiner look at that is just that, right? They're gonna look at it from an objective standpoint because they're not vested necessarily to one party or the other, and they're gonna apply a legal standard to it rather than a, you know, dealing with the emotion of it.
Right, a personal opinion,
Yes.
got it. Thank you.
And then if there's a situation where the tenants have to move, the owner has certain responsibilities to help with that displacement. There's an entire state website that talks about what to do if a mobile home park does have to close, and things that the landlord needs to do, not the least of which is give them notice. If they're gonna close, state law requires them to give 2 years' notice that they're anticipating closing. And if there's an interest in selling the mobile home park, this refers to the last bullet. There's an interest in selling the mobile home park, state law requires the existing tenant to get at least 70 days notice for them to organize themselves to potentially purchase the mobile home park from the owner and then become a resident-owned community, kind of self-manage it with like a homeowners association. So state law requires that if there's a sale pending, that the tenants are notified and they have that kind of the first right of refusal to also put in an offer for the purchase of it, which I think has happened around the state some, and it sounds like honestly a great way to go if they can make that. So that's.
Go ahead, Matt.
I know we swapped an email with a number of things. You've addressed a number of them, but in terms of the owner assistance to tenants if they were to become displaced, you know, I appreciate you kind of laying out some of the timelines there. It did sound like they're based upon your response about, you know, what kind of teeth there actually are in the ordinance for requiring owners to assist and provide resources and those types of things. There might be some room for us to continue to explore that as a council with policy. So can you describe exactly? Because again, as Deputy Mayor Bowman's talking about loopholes, I'm just thinking, you know, if I was a not so nice person who just wanted to displace people and sell my property, whatever that might be, I'm maybe just doing the bare minimum to get by and do my part, and then hope people move on. So, what would be our options to kind of ensure that tenants, if they were to be displaced, that owners did have to provide, you know, all the resources and proper notice and all those things?
Yeah, great question. So as I mentioned, state law would require them to provide notice. So that's not included in the ordinance. We do reference those state laws in the ordinance. And the ordinance would require the owner to submit a relocation plan to the director and for approval. And it has to include things that are, you know, explaining the tenant's rights, sources of assistance at government agencies, other places that they could seek vacant spaces for mobile manufactured home parks, variety of things that they need to provide. And that needs to be reviewed and approved by the director. And if there's a desire to kind of, I don't know, put a little more teeth in that, there, Seattle and Kent, they both require kind of a certification of compliance or completeness. So the owner would have to come back and say, yeah, I did all these things and completed it, and then get signed off by the director, basically, to verify that it got done.
Okay, and by director, is that's you in this instance?
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay. So we would, if we pursued that option as a council, you would still have some options for saying, hey, you haven't done your part here yet.
Correct.
You have more to
Yeah,
do.
and it would, like I said, in Seattle and Kent's language, it would prevent them from, say, they came in for a rezone, or if it was going to close, the mobile home park was actually gonna close. The language is that wouldn't happen until it was certified that it was compliant with their relocation plan. So if there's an interest in bringing back an amendment that shows that type of language in there, certainly can work with council on that happen. In fact, I'd recommend taking it to CD committee if we're gonna make changes like that.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Carla.
Thanks. Okay, so basically, I think what I'm hearing, and so you'll need to clarify for me. I'm hearing at the end of the day, and based on some communication that you've shared with us, at the end of the day, really what this does is it buys some time for the residents. It gives them 2 years to actually go out and find somewhere else potentially to live. It's
If-
kind of, it's a time thing.
If the park's actually gonna close.
It's gonna close
And if
because,
it's change, if it's selling, then it's 70 days.
right, if it's selling, but they still have a place to live.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing is if it's gonna close, there's 2 years that they get notification. And at the end of the day, I'm gonna use this word, the burden lies on the homeowner, the person living in the mobile home. It lies on them to go find somewhere else to live. Where by no means are we suggesting that we're telling the current mobile home park owner that they have to help with any sort of financial help find another park, but there's none of that
Right.
responsibility. It's mostly communication to the current owner. And then the responsibility is of the actual people being displaced to go find somewhere else to live.
Yeah, and in the relocation plan, it asks for a list of actions that the mobile home park owner will take to assist the park tenants. So they need to come up with some things they're going to do. And a description of other actions to minimize the hardship. So there's no requirement for any kind of financial assistance in the list of things. And but the plan should have, anyhow, it's a little bit vague there, but it has some actions that they can
Yeah.
take.
But just more about communication.
Right.
Got it. Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Anybody else? Matt, go ahead.
I might just follow up on that point as well, because I know something that you mentioned previously, just to emphasize this about the resident-owned communities is becoming more popular as well. And so it sounds like that's another piece that the owner would have to give basically tenants an opportunity to purchase their property and have a resident-owned community. So, but that would be part of it. Is that a state law that requires that?
Yes, it's
Okay.
a state law that requires that. So then the tenants would have an opportunity to organize, and there's organizations, a couple organizations around the state that specialize in this. And so they could contact one of those organizations, put together an offer, and then be able to be in the running to purchase it
Okay,
as well.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
In that scenario, Ryan, does everybody in that park have to agree to buy? Let's say only 50% or 40% afford to or want to buy, and the rest don't, then are they still able to do that, or?
I don't know enough, honestly, about that process.
I just don't know if they're forced to, and then let's say half of them don't want to,
Yeah,
or they can't
I
afford
would
it,
have to dig
and
into
where are
it
they at?
a
You
little
know,
further on that. I just know they have the opportunity to organize and do it. Do you have something?
Sorry to come barge in, but I wanted to clarify one piece in response to Councilmember Kenna's question. There is under state law, financial relocation assistance programs through the Department of Commerce. So while we're referencing internally in our ordinance state law, and we aren't providing financial assistance at the city level or requiring landlords to pay tenants that are displaced, there are state programs that are required to assist with displacement. There's relocation assistance, and then there's a variety of legal services that help tenants that are displaced or relocated from mobile home parks. So there is financial assistance available under state law.
Very good. Thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
Can I clarify one thing? Is that based on their financial need?
There, yes, there is an income scale and a spectrum. It's an application process.
Okay, thanks.
I don't think everyone gets the same amount of money, but it's available.
Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just trying to make sure I understand. So what I'm hearing is this manufacturing or mobile home park overlay zone. I'm not quite sure what it does, to be honest. I feel what I'm hearing is state law already requires a 2-year notice. State law requires some of the things, a lot of things you said are RCWs, and then this is the city level is putting an overlay zone. So what does the city level do that's different than the state? Because I'm kind of not quite, I'm not quite sure I understand why it matters, because it seems like the state's already telling everybody what to do. What does the city need to jump in on it for?
The city controls the zoning of what can actually be built on the property. So the overlay zone would make it so only a manufactured home park would be allowed on the property. You couldn't do multifamily, you couldn't do single family, you couldn't do Costco. You'd have to do a mobile home park.
What are the current zoning of the areas that they manufacture those 3 parks? Do you know, are they single family low density or
Well,
what are they?
Glad you brought that up, because I was going to also mention another amendment that I think needs to happen to the ordinance. The ordinance says that it applies to medium density and high density residential zones. But 2 of the parks on the list are actually in low density residential zones, Somerville Estates and Mobile A Manor, Double A Manor. And then Crystal Springs is in high density residential.
Okay. And then another question I had was, so this is basically, we're just kind of moving forward, not because the park owner wanted this or the people in the park were like, hey, we want more. Because it sounds like the state law already has the first right of refusal in it. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the city is not gonna add like, hey, we're gonna give more rights to the residents of the park. We're just gonna prevent the zoning from changing as far as that goes, like so maybe discouraging the person from selling it to be developed as an apartment. Is that the goal?
Yeah, discouraging them from selling it to be developed and prohibiting it from being redeveloped unless the owner is successful in making a use exception case to the hearing examiner and actually getting the zoning, the overlay.
And I'm just trying to, my understanding from people that I know who invest in mobile home parks is there actually are people that come in and raise rents and do things that are very similar to apartments. So I'm just trying to figure out, how does this zoning that the city is proposing actually keep the rents down? Because I don't think unless we do rent control, which we already have at a state level, I'm trying to figure out why this actually creates affordable housing versus just keeping it as a mobile home park. And mobile home park, non-mobile home park, I think we need to make a place for people to live.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's a restrictive zoning, and I don't know I'm trying to figure out why it is actually encouraging affordable housing when I've seen people buy these parks. I mean, home ownership, I think, is great if there's a pathway to that, but that seems like the state has already provided for that as a mandatory thing. So I guess that's what I'm trying to get my head around is I looked up some things on these overlay zones, and it doesn't, to me, I don't see the connection between this zone and actually making sure housing stays affordable. It keeps old buildings there, never lets them be redeveloped, but does it actually create a place that's affordable? And I feel like it puts a burden on the owner, but it doesn't necessarily solve the problem. So I'm just struggling to understand the connection between it. I feel like the state people have argued that rent control makes housing affordable, and I don't understand that argument either, because I think the cost of housing is mostly caused by the state policies and taxes and stuff. So I guess I'm just struggling to figure out what the benefit of this zone. It seems like it's creating restrictions. I feel like the state has already provided a lot of protection. So I'm just working through that.
So the intent is to obviously preserve it as a mobile home park. It's current, I think most of these mobile home parks are definitely Double A Manor based on testimony we've heard and testimony from the owner. It's quite affordable in terms of the lease rate on the lots. There isn't anything in the code or that would prevent the sale to somebody who wanted to purchase it as a mobile home park. And as you described, make improvements and raise the rent. There's nothing in the ordinance that would prevent somebody from doing that in that regard. So in that case, you know, I mean, the intent is to keep it as that use and, you know, as affordable as it can be. I mean, the benefit of mobile home living is that it often has families in there. You get a little more privacy and independence with your own unit on a lot. The Somerville Estates in particular, I know, has a pretty high Hispanic population, so in that regard. And AA is 55 and over, so you're talking about seniors at Crystal Springs. I don't think that's 55 and over, but I know AA Manor definitely is. So it's really a step to try to retain those areas as affordable. Again, somebody could choose to do something different and invest in the situation and raise rents and I guess become unaffordable potentially.
Yeah, and I think so. My basic opinion on this matter is just that I think that making an incentive to say, hey, let's keep this affordable through saying it's going to be 55 plus. There's an incentive if you're going to keep it that 55 plus, which I think would be potentially a really great way to incentivize someone to say, hey, let's make this so we can continue to keep things where people can afford them. To make it so that if you do redevelopment, you have some requirements to have affordable as an element of your redevelopment. That makes sense to me. So some of the counter arguments that I read were like, if it's really about affordable housing, let's make this not so much a use issue as more of a, let's put some affordable housing criteria, like the senior housing, either requirement or incentive or the mandatory affordable in these areas instead of just saying, hey, to me, mobile home parks have a benefit and they may be affordable, but that at some point in time they might not be. So just to me, it's a little bit like how we did our form-based code. And we said, hey, we really like retail on our main street, but there's nobody who's gonna afford retail right now. So let's make them build the floors so they're 10 feet tall. So eventually it could be retail if we get bigger, but you're making it so that the use is flexible and the economic drivers really drive it. So I guess I'm in favor of creating a different vehicle to protect affordable housing, I guess.
Boy, Andy, that was a lot. But with all that said, so I have to take it back to when does somebody have to notify for 2 years versus the 70 days? I lost that. Can you clarify that for
Yes,
me?
so if the
Please.
park is closing, it's a 2-year notice.
Okay,
If
thanks.
they're selling it, it's 70.
Thank you. And then one other thing, Andy said something. Is there a cap on mobile home lot rent now? Because there used to not be. So I know there's rent control, but is there a cap in this state? That would be a question I would be curious to know. Is there a cap on lot rent in mobile home park in this state?
I don't,
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I believe I talked to one of the older tenants there where I'm at the.
No,
Can't say nothing
no,
They
this
said
is
like
a
a
study session. This is
5%
for
for-
them.
per year go up.
Sir, I'm sorry, you can't
That's all.
speak in this meeting.
Sorry.
Can we validate that though?
Yeah, I can.
I mean, being a child of parents that lived in a mobile home park and when their lot rent started at $350 a month. And by the time I moved them out, 7 years later, it was $1,850 a month.
Hmm.
And they could no longer afford to live there. So that's why I'm wondering if they're truly, I mean, that's different than rent control. So wondering if there's a cap. Sounds like somebody in the room knows something, but if you
Yeah,
could
I'll-
look it up,
I'll do
I'd be
research.
curious
I-
just to know.
I just actually verified it. Google, 5%.
You can talk.
5%, sorry.
5%.
Can he talk, Mayor?
Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I was just saying I found it's 5%. That's as
Per year?
uh
Per year?
5% per year, yes.
So year over year, 5%,
Yep.
it can go up. So in 10 years, you better plan on moving. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Barbara.
So I noticed in one of the comments to the planning commission that some of the mobile homes are getting kind of old and are not able to be moved. And are the tenants required to do anything for upkeep on their, unit? Because, I mean, it just seems as these mobile homes parks get older, then at some point, I think you kind of reach the maximum life expectancy of the mobile homes. So are they required to do anything to maintain or, keep it up? Upgraded?
I don't know what the individual requirements are in the parks, but what I do know is old mobile homes are often moved out of the parks and new ones moved in often, but that's certainly something that they work with in development services. Somebody will come in with permits to do, take out an older unit, put in a new, sign the map.
Yeah, so still need to be livable and habitable, right? So
Yeah.
I know we've had to take code enforcement action on mobile homes in these parks to make sure they're meeting like fire setbacks, for example. So it is something that we do encounter and we do handle on a case by case basis as needed.
All right, thank you.
Did you have something?
And that's where I was gonna go, because there's houses in this town that we need code enforcement to take action on. I don't know that it's a mobile home issue. I think it's just the caretaker of a place. I know a number of people that live in very old 1972 14 by 70s that are in great shape because they take care of their home. So I think it's more about who takes care of the home. We've got houses here that we should do that on. That's just my thoughts.
Anybody else? Good. We good? One more?
I know in the planning commission, they did have a hearing on this, correct? I think I
Yes.
saw that. Is there going to be a hearing and what's the next, what's the process look like on this?
That's a great question. Given the discussion we've had here tonight and some potential amendments, I would recommend that it be deferred back to the Community Development Committee, kind of work through those amendments and then bring it back as a recommendation to the whole council. So was gonna bring it back October 2nd, but I think, and it might still work. But definitely would recommend taking it to the CD committee as we kind of work out the final details. So,
Anybody else?
on that.
Anybody down here? You good?
I'm good. I agree with what you just said. I think it deserves a little more time and attention. Thanks.
Okay. Is that it for you, Ryan?
That's everything unless there's more questions. Good discussion.
Okay, so we are going to move on to the city administrator report. Nothing tonight? All right. Do we have any council agenda matters that we need to talk about or any?
I've asked Councilmember Cole to attend for me at the Pierce County Regional. She's said she would.
Did I say that? I did. I did.
So you've got that all straightened out. You're good. Okay, we have no executive session tonight. And so I will adjourn this meeting at 7:27.
Thanks, Mayor.
All right.